The corridor was dark and smelled of rust and old oil, and Laura Mitchell walked through it with her toolbox in one hand and a dim flashlight in the other, checking the pipes like she did every night on Horizon's Edge Station, a place where nobody asked questions and everybody had something to hide, which suited her just fine. After 3 years of running, she heard the sound first, a heavy scraping noise like metal dragging against the floor, and then a low growl that was more pain than threat. And she stopped walking and listened carefully, because sounds like that usually meant trouble. And trouble was something she had learned to avoid. But when she turned the corner and saw the massive body collapsed against the wall, she did not run away. The alien was Valkyrie. She could tell from the forearms and the scaled skin that gleamed dark blue even in the weak light. And he was big, maybe 7 feet tall, wearing battle armor that sparked and flickered with failing power. And there was blood on the floor beneath him. Purple blood that told her he was hurt badly. His eyes opened when her flashlight touched his face, and they were gold and filled with pain. And he tried to raise one of his forearms in defense, but the movement made him groan and fall back against the wall. Laura stood very still for a moment. She knew what the smart thing was. And the smart thing was to walk away and pretend she never saw him. Because helping a Valkyrie soldier on a neutral station could bring the Dominion patrols down on everyone. And the Dominion did not forgive people who helped their enemies. But his honor was dying, and that meant he was dying. And Laura had never been very good at walking away from broken things. She set down her toolbox and knelt beside him, ignoring the way his golden eyes watched her with confusion and suspicion. And she pulled open the access panel on his chest plate and looked at the damage inside. It was bad. Very bad. The life support system was barely functioning and the power cells were cracked and leaking. And whoever had attacked him had known exactly where to hit a Valkyrie warrior to make him suffer. The alien spoke, his voice rough and weak, asking her something in his own language that she did not understand. And when she did not answer, he switched to Common, the trade language that everyone in this part of space used. Human, he said, and the word came out like a question. Why do you stop? Your armor is broken, Laura said without looking up from her work, and I fix things. So be quiet and let me work. He made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a cough. And then his head fell back and his eyes closed. And Laura worked faster because she knew he did not have much time. She worked through the night. The Valkyrie armor was complex and beautiful in its design. 400 years of warrior tradition built into every circuit and plate. And it should have been impossible for a human mechanic to understand. But Laura's hands moved with certainty as she bypassed damaged systems and rerouted power and sealed the cracks in the life support with compounds from her toolbox. Twice the alien stopped breathing, and twice she shocked his heart's back to life using his own armor's emergency systems. And each time his golden eyes flickered open for just a moment before closing again. By the time the station's lights shifted to indicate morning, she had done everything she could do. The armor hummed with steady power now, the life support feeding clean air and medicine into his body, and his breathing was strong and even. And the purple blood had stopped flowing from his wounds. Laura sat back against the opposite wall and looked at her work. The Valkyrie would live. And his armor was better than before, rebuilt with modifications that would make it run more efficiently and last longer. Because when Laura fixed something, she fixed it right. She should stay and make sure he recovered safely. But she could hear workers beginning their shifts in the corridors above. And she had already been away from her post for too long. And there were questions she did not want to answer, so she gathered her tools and she stood up and she looked at the sleeping alien one more time. Try not to die, she said quietly. And then she walked away into the dim corridors of the station. Just another mechanic going about her work. Just another ghost in a place full of ghosts. The Valkyrie warrior named Kethver woke 4 hours later he woke suddenly. The way warriors wake, with his hands reaching for weapons and his hearts pounding with battle readiness. And for a moment he did not understand where he was or why he was still alive. The last thing he remembered was the ambush. His unit torn apart by Dominion forces, his brothers and sisters falling around him. And then running, wounded and alone, through the dark spaces between stars until he found this station and collapsed in its forgotten corridors. He should be dead. He looked down at his armor and saw that it was whole. The damage repaired with careful skill. The systems running better than they had in years. And he did not understand, because this was not Velthury work. The techniques were different, human perhaps. But what human could repair sacred warrior armor? He stood slowly, testing his strength, and found that he was weak but stable. And his wounds were healing under the armor's medical systems. There was a toolbox on the floor nearby. A simple metal container with human markings. And beside it was a single tool that had been left behind. A small device for working with power cells. Someone had saved him. Someone had worked through the night to repair his armor and keep him alive. And then left without waiting for thanks or reward. Without even waking him, Kethver picked up the small tool and held it in his massive hand. In his culture, there was a word for what had happened. Kalsethra, the life debt, and it was the most serious bond one warrior could owe another. A debt that could only be repaid through service or sacrifice. He did not know who had saved him. But he would find out. He would find the one who had fixed his armor and kept him breathing through the long night. And he would repay the debt, because that was the Velthury way. And Kethver was the last of his unit. And honor was all he had left. He walked out of the corridor and into the station, searching for answers. Searching for the human who had shown him a kindness he did not expect and could not explain. Kethver spent 3 days searching the station for the one who had saved. In Horizon's Edge was not a large station, but it was crowded with refugees and traders and criminals. Thousands of beings from dozens of species, all living in the cramped corridors and market squares. And finding one human among them was like searching for a single star in a galaxy. He asked questions everywhere he went, showing the small tool he had found and describing what little he knew. And most beings looked at him with fear or suspicion, because Velthury warriors did not usually walk through neutral stations asking polite questions, but slowly he gathered pieces of the truth. A Corvian trader told him about a human mechanic who worked in the lower levels. A woman who could fix anything and charged fair prices. And a refugee family from the border worlds said they had seen a human woman with brown hair and quiet eyes walking through the maintenance corridors. Late at night on the third day, he found her workshop. It was a small space carved out of an abandoned storage bay, filled with tools and parts and half-finished repairs. And the woman he sought was sitting at a workbench with her back to the door, working on something he could not see. She was smaller than he expected, thin and tired-looking, with brown hair pulled back from her face and hands that moved with quick precision. And she wore long sleeves despite the heat of the engine systems nearby. And she did not look like someone who could have saved a Velthury warrior from death, but when he stepped into the workshop, she turned around. And he saw her eyes, and he knew those were not the eyes of a simple mechanic. "You should not have found me," she said. And her voice was calm and flat, and she turned back to her work as if a 7-foot alien warrior was not standing in her doorway. Kethver moved forward into the workshop, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. And he stopped a few feet away from her and waited. "You saved my life," he said. "You repaired my armor when any other being would have left me to die. And I have come to repay the debt." She did not look up from her work. "There is no debt," she said. "Your armor was broken and I fixed it. That is what I do. You do not owe me anything." "That is not how it works among my people," Kethver said. And he heard the frustration in his own voice. "You gave me my life back. It creates a bond that cannot be ignored. I must repay you or serve you until the debt is balanced." Now she did look up, and there was something in her eyes that he could not read. Something tired and sad and maybe a little angry. "I do not want your service," she said. "I do not want anything from you. I just want to be left alone." "That is not a choice you can make," Kethver said. "The Calcethra binds me, whether you accept it or not. So you can either tell me how to repay you, or accept that. I will stay here until I find a way myself." She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her thinking, calculating, weighing options the way a soldier weighs the odds of a battle. And that was when he became certain that she was more than she appeared. "Fine," she said finally. "Stay if you must, but do not ask about my past. Do not follow me when I leave the workshop, and do not draw attention to either of us." "Can you do that?" "I can," Kethver said. Though he did not like making promises that limited his ability to protect her, she nodded and turned back to her work. And just like that, he had a purpose again. A reason to wake up each morning that was not just the memory of his fallen unit and the weight of survivor's guilt. Spent the following days watching her and learning. He learned that her name was Lavra, though he suspected it was not her real name. And he learned that she worked double shifts most days, repairing equipment for anyone who needed it, charging just enough to cover her costs and a little more. He learned that she sent most of her credits off station through encrypted channels to destinations she would not discuss. And he learned that she had refused offers from wealthy merchant captains who wanted her skills for their ships. She lived simply and quietly, eating little and sleeping less. And she never talked about where she had come from or why she was here. But Kethver was a warrior trained to observe. And he saw things she probably did not want him to see. He saw the way she moved, always balanced and ready, never with her back to a door, always aware of everyone around her. And those were not the habits of a mechanic. Those were the habits of someone trained for combat. He saw her hands, quick and precise, moving with an efficiency that spoke of muscle memory drilled into her through countless hours of practice. And he wondered what those hands had done before they learned to fix machines. He saw the way she watched the station's security feeds, tracking patrol patterns and noting changes. And he saw the way she tensed whenever a Dominion uniform appeared on the screens, and then the Dominion came to Horizon's edge. The patrol ship docked on a Tuesday, which was unusual because Dominion patrols usually avoided neutral stations unless they had specific business. And Laura's entire demeanor changed the moment she heard the news. She became sharper, more alert, her movements taking on a controlled urgency that reminded Kethver of the moments before battle. And she began checking exit routes and supply caches as if preparing for a siege. "We need to move," she said. And it was not a suggestion. There are maintenance tunnels that bypass the main corridors. The Dominion does not know about them. We can wait there until they leave. Kethver followed her without question, because he recognized the look in her eyes, the look of someone who knew exactly what danger was coming and exactly how to survive it. She led him through hidden passages and forgotten corridors, moving with a confidence that spoke of careful preparation. And he realized that she had planned escape routes long before he ever arrived, that she had been living in a state of constant readiness for years. "Who are you?" he asked as they waited in the darkness of a sealed maintenance bay. "What are you really?" She was quiet for a long time, and when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Someone who made the wrong enemies," she said. "Someone who has been running for a very long time, and in the corridors above them." A Dominion officer showed station security a holographic image, and the image was of Laura's face. They stayed hidden for 2 days while the Dominion patrol searched the station. Laura barely slept, spending most of her time monitoring communication frequencies with a small device she had hidden in her workshop. And Kethver watched her and said nothing, because he could see that she was carrying a weight he did not yet understand on the second night. When the patrol seemed to be finishing their search without finding anything, a drunk trader stumbled into the maintenance bay where they were hiding. The trader was Grelian, short and green-skinned and clearly intoxicated. And when he saw Laura, he grinned and reached out to grab her arm, saying something crude about human women in the trading slums. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. Laura moved like water flowing around a stone, her body shifting with practiced grace. And suddenly, the trader was on the ground with his arm bent at an angle that made Kethver wince. And Laura was standing over him with her knee on his chest and her hand near his throat. Then she seemed to catch herself. She released the trader and stepped back, her face showing something like fear, and she turned and walked quickly into the deeper shadows of the maintenance tunnels. The trader scrambled to his feet and ran away, too frightened and confused to cause trouble. And Kethver followed Laura into the darkness. He found her leaning against the wall with her eyes closed and her hands pressed flat against the metal, breathing slowly and deliberately, the way someone breathes when they are trying to control a reaction they cannot afford to show. That was not the training of a mechanic, Kethver said quietly. No, Laura said. And she did not open her eyes. It was not. Will you tell me the truth now? He asked. Will you tell me who you really are and why the Dominion is hunting you? She was silent for a long moment, and then she opened her eyes and looked at him. And he saw something in her gaze that he recognized. The look of a soldier who was tired of carrying a burden alone. If I tell you, she said, you become part of this, and being part of this is dangerous. More dangerous than you understand. I owe you a life debt, Kethver said. I am already part of this, whatever this is. She studied him for a moment, and then she reached down and rolled up her left sleeve, exposing her inner wrist. There was a tattoo there, small and precise, showing a circle containing a blue and green planet with a sword and olive branch crossed behind it. And Kethver felt his heart stop when he recognized the symbol. You are Earthborn, he said. And his voice came out as barely more than a whisper. The Earthborn Guard. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Earthborn Guard, even species that had never met a human, because stories traveled fast, and the stories about the Earthborn were the kind that made warriors check their weapons and commanders double their patrols. Humans were already considered dangerous, evolved on a death world where everything wanted to kill them, adapted for endurance and violence in ways that made other species uncomfortable. But most humans were soft, civilized, removed from their predator ancestors by generations of peaceful living. The Earthborn were different. The Earthborn were humans who had been selected and trained and shaped into something that reminded the galaxy why humans had once been apex predators. Soldiers who could fight in any environment and adapt to any enemy and survive conditions that would kill anyone else. 1 in 50,000 human applicants survived the selection process, and those who made it through became legends. I was Sergeant First Class Laura Mitchell, she said, and her voice was flat and empty. 7th Reconnaissance Unit of the Earthborn Guard. And I have been running for 3 years. Kethver did not know what to say. He had thought perhaps she was a deserter, a soldier who had fled from battle, and he had prepared himself to judge her for that cowardice. But the Earthborn did not desert. The Earthborn would rather die than abandon their duty. So whatever had happened must have been something else entirely. What happened? He asked. Laura pulled her sleeve back down and covered the tattoo. And when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 3 years of silence. My unit was sent on a reconnaissance mission to a Dominion border world, she said. There were 12 of us, the best soldiers humanity had to offer. And we were supposed to gather intelligence on a new weapons facility. She paused. And Kethver waited. We found something, she continued. Something worse than anyone expected. The Dominion was building a weapon, a planet killer designed to sterilize entire worlds. And the first targets were going to be Velthury homeworlds. Kethver felt cold spread through his body. The Velthury had been at war with the Dominion for over a century, losing worlds and soldiers and hope with each passing year. But he had never imagined that the enemy was planning something so terrible, something that would end not just the war, but his entire species. "We tried to extract with the evidence," Lavra said. "But we were ambushed. Someone had betrayed us. Someone within Earth's own diplomatic corps who was secretly working with the Dominion. And my entire unit was killed." Her voice did not shake, but Kethver could see the pain in her eyes. The grief of a soldier who had lost everyone she cared about. "I was the only survivor," she said. "And I escaped with the evidence, the plans for the weapon stored in an encrypted chip implanted in my body. But when I tried to report what had happened, I was blamed for the mission's failure. The traitors had arranged everything, and I was going to be executed in a show trial to cover up the truth. So you ran," Kethver said. "So I ran," Lavra agreed. "And I have been hiding ever since, sending money to the families of my fallen teammates, trying to find someone I could trust with the evidence. But the Dominion has been hunting me for 3 years, and now they have found me, as if to prove her words." The sound of heavy boots echoed in the corridor above them, and voices called out in the harsh language of the Dominion military. They had been found. Laura's eyes met his, and in that moment she was not a tired mechanic hiding in the shadows. She was a warrior of the Earthborn Guard, one of the most dangerous soldiers humanity had ever produced. And she was ready to fight. "Stay behind me," she said, and her voice was cold and certain. "And when I tell you to run, you run. Do you understand?" Kethver stood to his full height and spread his 4 arms, each hand reaching for a weapon. "I will not run," he said. "I owe you a life debt, and I am Velthury. And you have just told me that you carry the hope of saving my homeworlds in your body. So we fight together or we die together. But I will not leave you." Lavra looked at him for a long moment, and something in her expression softened just slightly. "Then stay close," she said, "and try to keep up." The first Dominion soldier came around the corner with his weapon raised and his armor gleaming in the dim light. And he was dead before he could fire a single shot. Laura moved like nothing Kethver had ever seen, faster than any human should be able to move, her body flowing through the darkness with deadly grace. And her hands found the weak points in the soldier's armor, as if she had studied every flaw in the design. The soldier fell, and Laura took his weapon and kept moving. And Kethver followed her through the maintenance tunnels, his 4 arms holding weapons he had taken from his own damaged equipment. And he struggled to keep pace with the human woman who ran ahead of him. More soldiers appeared, and Laura dealt with them one by one, never wasting a movement, never hesitating. Her attacks precise and efficient and utterly without mercy. And Kethver realized he was watching the true power of the Earthborn Guard. He was a veteran warrior of his people, trained since childhood in the arts of combat, and he had killed enemies across a dozen worlds. But watching Laura fight made him feel like a student again, because she was operating on a level he had not known existed. They burst out of the tunnels into a cargo bay, where 6 more soldiers waited, and Laura took down 4 of them before Kethver could engage the other 2. And then they were running again, through corridors and storage rooms and access shafts, always one step ahead of the pursuit. "The docking level," Lavra said as they ran. "There is an emergency shuttle in Bay 17. We can reach it if we move fast." But the Dominion had brought more forces than expected. They came around a corner and found themselves facing a wall of soldiers, 20 or more, blocking the path to the docking level. And behind them stood a tall figure in the ornate armor of a Dominion commander. "Sergeant Mitchell," the commander said, and his voice was smooth and cold. "You have led us on quite a chase. But the hunt is over now." Lavra stopped running and raised her weapon. But she knew as well as Cathfor that they could not fight through this many enemies. Not in an open corridor with no cover, Commander Dresh, Lara said. And there was recognition in her voice, hatred and fury barely contained. You were there when my unit was ambushed. You gave the order that killed my soldiers. The commander smiled, a thin, cruel expression that made Cathfor want to tear him apart. Your soldiers died because they discovered something they should not have found, Dresh said. And you will die for the same reason. But first, you will give us the data chip you carry. The one containing the evidence of our greatest weapon. Your planet killer, Lara said, and she did not lower her weapon. Designed to burn Velthari worlds to ash. Among other uses, Dresh said, it will reshape the galaxy. And there is nothing you or anyone else can do to stop it. Cathfor felt rage building in his chest, hot and terrible. The rage of a warrior who had just learned that his enemy planned to murder everyone he had ever loved. But Lara spoke before he could act. There is one thing I can do, she said. I can make sure the evidence reaches people who will stop you. You have been running for 3 years and found no one to trust, Dresh said. You will not find anyone now. Lara glanced at Cathfor. Just for a moment, and he saw something in her eyes. A decision being made, maybe I already have, she said, and then she threw herself to the side as Dominion weapons fired. And she was shooting as she fell, not at the soldiers, but at the power conduits on the ceiling. And the corridor exploded in sparks, and darkness. Thith did not hesitate. He grabbed Lara and ran, using his superior strength to carry her through a side passage while the Dominion soldiers struggled in the sudden blackout. They ran until they could not run anymore, until they reached a sealed section of the station that had been abandoned years ago. And Lara used her technical skills to override the locks and get them inside. She collapsed against the wall, and Cathfor saw blood on her side. Bright red human blood flowing from a wound where a Dominion energy weapon had grazed her. Let me see, he said. But she pushed his hands away. Listen to me, she said, and her voice was urgent. The chip in my body contains everything. The weapon plans, the names of the traitors in Earth's government, the evidence of the Dominion's war crimes. If I die before that information gets out, then my entire unit died for nothing. You are not going to die, Cathfor said. But even as he spoke, he could see that her wound was bad, that she was losing blood faster than her body could replace it. I might, Lara said. So you need to know something. Your armor's long-range transmitter, the one I repaired, it can reach Velthari military frequencies. If you send a distress signal with a code I give you, your people will come. Cathfor stared at her. You knew I could do this, he said. You could have asked me days ago. Why did you not? Because calling your people means revealing where I am, Lara said. It means trusting that the Velthari will protect me instead of turning me over to the Dominion for political advantage. And I have spent 3 years trusting no one. Then why now? He asked. She looked at him. And despite the pain and the blood loss, she smiled just slightly. Because you stayed, she said. When I told you what I was and what I carried, you could have walked away. The Dominion would have let you go. You are not their enemy, but you stayed and fought beside me. And I think maybe that means I can trust you. Cathfor was quiet for a long moment. This human woman had saved his life without knowing anything about him, had fixed his armor and kept him breathing through a long night. And now she was offering him the chance to save his entire species, trusting him with a secret she had protected for 3 years, the life debt. He realized was already beginning to balance. I will call my people, he said, and they will come and we will protect you. I swear it on the honor of my house and the blood of my fallen unit. He activated his armor's transmitter and sent the signal. A code that had not been used in 100 years. A code that meant one thing to every Velthari warrior who heard it: an ally of our people needs sanctuary. And we will answer above them. The Dominion forces began cutting through the sealed doors, and Lara gripped her weapon with blood-slick hands. And Kethver stood beside her, forearms ready for battle, waiting for either rescue or death. The Dominion soldiers breached the sealed door. Just as Laura's vision began to blur from blood loss, she raised her weapon anyway, ready to fight until she could no longer move. Because that was what Earthborn soldiers did. They fought until the end. And Lara had been running for too long to stop. Now Kethver stood in front of her, his massive body blocking her from the first wave of energy fire, his armor absorbing hits that would have killed her instantly. And he roared a battle cry in his native language. As he charged into the enemy formation, she watched him fight. This alien warrior who owed her nothing except a debt he had chosen to honor. And she thought that maybe she had finally found something worth trusting after 3 years of being alone then. The station shook. It was not an explosion from the fighting. It was something bigger, something powerful enough to vibrate through the entire structure of Horizon's Edge. And the Dominion soldiers stopped their advance and looked at each other with sudden fear. "What is that?" Commander Dresch demanded. And for the first time, his smooth voice carried a note of uncertainty. A new voice answered him, broadcast through the station's communication system, cold and commanding and speaking in the formal Velthari dialect used by military nobility. "This is Admiral Virakoth of the Velthari Ascendancy battlecruiser Unbroken Fury. We have received a sanctuary signal from this station. Any being who interferes with our response will be considered an enemy of the Ascendancy. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your forces or face the consequences." Dresch's face twisted with rage. "The Velthari have no authority here," he shouted. "This is neutral territory. Neutral territory where you are hunting a refugee who carries evidence of war crimes." Admiral Virakoth replied, "That makes this our business." 50 seconds. The Dominion soldiers looked at their commander, waiting for orders. And Dresch looked at Lara with pure hatred in his eyes. "This is not over," he said. "We will find you again." 40 seconds. The Admiral Sadrish gave the order to retreat. And the Dominion forces pulled back, and Lara let herself slide down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her weapon falling from her finger. Kethver was beside her in an instant, pressing his hands against her wound to slow the bleeding. "Help is coming," he said. "Stay awake. Do not close your eyes." "Trying," Lara whispered. But everything was becoming very far away. She did not remember the Velthari medical team arriving, did not remember being carried to a shuttle and taken aboard the battlecruiser, did not remember anything until she woke in a clean, white room with her wound sealed and machines monitoring her vital signs. Kethver was there when she opened her eyes. So was a Velthari woman in the ornate armor of an admiral, tall and silver-scaled, with the same golden eyes as Kethver. "You are Lara Mitchell," the admiral said. "The human who saved my nephew's life." Lara looked at Kethver, and he gave a small shrug. "My aunt commands this fleet," he said. "I thought I mentioned that." "You did not," Lara said. And despite everything she felt herself smile. Admiral Virakoth studied her for a long moment. "My nephew tells me you carry evidence of a Dominion weapon capable of destroying our homeworlds," the admiral said. "He tells me you have been protecting this evidence for 3 years, at great personal cost. And I would like to know why." Lara was quiet for a moment. "Because my soldiers died getting it," she finally said. "And I was not going to let their sacrifice mean nothing." The admiral nodded slowly. "Our medical team can extract the data chips safely," she said. "If you consent, we will transmit the evidence to both Velthari High Command and Earth's government simultaneously. It will be public, undeniable, impossible to cover up." "Do it," Lara said. "Let everyone know what the Dominion planned to do." 3 weeks later, the galaxy changed. The evidence of the planet killer weapon spread across every news network and diplomatic channel in known space. and the outcry was immediate and overwhelming. The Dominion denied everything at first, but the evidence was too detailed, too complete. And within days their allies began abandoning the myths. Government launched an investigation into the traitors who had framed Lara, and 7 high-ranking officials were arrested, including an ambassador who had been secretly working with the Dominion for 15 years. The Maze. Valkyrie Ascendancy issued a formal statement, thanking humanity for the courage and conscience of one quiet soldier who chose duty over safety, and for the first time in a century, the war between the Ascendancy and the Dominion began to move toward peace. Laura Mitchell was officially exonerated, her rank restored, her record cleared, and she was offered a position training the next generation of Earthborn Guard soldiers. A chance to shape the future of humanity's most elite warriors. She thought about it for 2 days, and then turned it down 6 months later. She was back on Horizon's Edge. The station had not changed much, still run down and crowded, still filled with refugees and traders, and people who had nowhere else to go. But it felt different now. Or maybe she was the one who was different. She walked into her old workshop and found that someone had been keeping it clean, maintaining the tools, making sure everything was ready for when she returned. She smiled and started unpacking. Kether found her 3 hours later, working on a broken atmospheric processor that one of the station's vendors had brought in. "You came back," he said. And there was something in his voice that might have been relief. "I came back." Lavra agreed without looking up from her work. "You could have been a hero," Kethver said. "You could have had anything you wanted, riches and glory and a place in history. Why would you choose to come back here?" Lavra finished what she was doing and set down her tools. And she looked at the Valkyrie warrior who had become something she had not expected. Something like a friend. "Because someone has to keep this old station running," she said. "Because the people here need someone who can fix things, and because I spent 3 years running and I am tired. And this feels like home now." Kethver was quiet for a moment. "My life debt is repaid," he said. "The evidence you carried saved billions of my people. We are even now. I do not have to stay." "I know," Laura said. "But I think I will stay anyway," Kethver said. "If you do not object," Laura smiled, a real smile, the kind she had not worn in years. "I heard there is a Valkyrie warrior who thinks he is good with machines," she said. "Maybe he could learn a thing or two, if he does not mind taking orders from a human." Kethver laughed, the first true laugh he had made since his unit was killed, and he picked up a wrench with one of his 4 hands. "Show me what needs fixing," he said, and Laura did. They worked side by side as the station hummed around them. 2 warriors who had found peace in the simple act of repairing what was broken. And outside the viewport, the stars shone bright and endless, full of dangers and wonders and all the things that made the galaxy worth protecting. And it started with a quiet act of kindness. A human woman fixing a stranger's armor in the dark. And it had ended with 2 species drawing closer together and the beginning of peace. After a century of war, that was the power of humans. Kethver thought, as he watched Lara work, not their strength or their speed or their terrifying adaptability, but their stubborn, impossible capacity for caring about beings they had never met. Their willingness to sacrifice everything for principles others thought were weaknesses. The Earthborn seal on Laura's wrist was just a symbol, a mark of training and selection and deadly skill. But the true mark of her people was something that could not be tattooed or earned. It was simply who they were, and the galaxy was better for it.